GM, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today is Monday, the 23rd of December, and let's get straight into the charts. So, as we can see, Bitcoin closing the week down around 95,000 and fairly bearish, pretty big red week last week for Bitcoin. Obviously, FOMC comments from Fed Chairman Powell really rocked the market. It seems like Jerome Powell has stolen Christmas from the majority of crypto and stock market investors. So I think he's definitely going to be on the naughty list and shouldn't be expecting too much in the way of presents from Santa this year himself. But just getting a bit more serious, then we can see importantly, Bitcoin on a longer term time frame is still holding this ascending trend line, which is currently coming in around about 91 to 91,500 and is obviously rising up. So I'm thinking that this is going to be quite a key level over the next few days and weeks to hold. Obviously, if we do lose this level, I'll look for us maybe to come back down to this 88,000, 88.8 thousand area, and then potentially we are targeting this low down here at around about 85,000. So I'm thinking in terms of an expected path, it's obviously been a little while since I put a path on the chart and I'm trying to remember where I get it. Here we go. Um, these tend to be better drawn on the 4 hour. So let me see if I can do something like this. Okay, that looks good. What I'm thinking we could do from here would be uh, definitely on a bounce now. Obviously, a higher low coming in from Friday yesterday. So if we can sustain this momentum, I'm probably expecting a push up to around this sort of 90, sort of 1 to 92,000 area, maybe back testing this descending trend line, and maybe that comes in on the end of December. We know that markets or that the crypto market has been tending or has a tendency to sell off at the first in the first few days of each month. Obviously, that coincides with us getting a new moon in the first few days of the month. So potentially, that could be something that investors are starting to sort of de-risk into the start of the month, just knowing that this pattern that has been repeating over the last few months could continue to do so. So potentially, I'm thinking, look, we might then come down and we either sort of retest these lows. So I would think potentially we come in here and then we get some sort of choppy price action and eventually we sort of break higher again. That for me is one potential scenario that I'd be expecting for Bitcoin. If we can sort of hold this ascending trend line, potentially we have sort of little dips down, but not fully breaking down lower. The other thing we might do is we might see more of a dramatic drop down to around 85,000, and all of this just kind of gets shifted down and obviously shifted along to the right then. And obviously, it would then take a lot more time for this to rebuild, and probably we would see a rally sort of later on. This might even get extended then into February, and we might see, sort of a choppy start to next year. So this is what I'm currently looking at. I'm actually gonna be, optimistic with this, and I'm gonna say that look, we might flush this low, come down to that trend line, potentially we take a little dip below the trend line, or we hold those lows, and then actually sort of come sort of late January, we're sort of back towards all-time highs. Corrections in the bull run typically tend not to last too long, especially once Bitcoin has already made its way to new all-time highs. So I'm going to put this on here currently as my preferred path. I'm expecting some sort of structure similar to this. It might not be completely to timescale. It might not be to exact price, but I am thinking that this probably is uh, going to be something that Bitcoin does over the next month. And of course, I mean, like I say, we could come below this trend line. We could have one more leg down, but I'm not expecting too much more of a breakdown here. Obviously, this type of price action will start to get everybody very bearish and starting to target lower prices. But obviously, this is going to coincide with Trump coming into office, and there's this potential that Trump is going to talk about the strategic Bitcoin reserve early on. Some people are saying within his first 100 days. Other people are turning around and saying it will be on day one that he comes out and he says, "Look, we're gonna pass this. We're going to launch this. This is what we're going to do." So look, I think it's hard to get super bearish here. It's obviously hard to get bearish whilst these lows are being held, and obviously there is demand. There is big demand coming in at these levels, and obviously, we know about some of the buyers. We know Michael Saylor's going to keep on buying Bitcoin. We know that the UAE have now also started to buy Bitcoin. CZ tweeted something yesterday about that. So, look, nation states are now looking to accumulate. The USA is talking about the strategic Bitcoin reserve. I'm sure other countries are going to follow suit. So, it's just a difficult time to get to bearish. And obviously, we remember where we are in terms of the 4 year cycle. We're about to go into 2025. We're going into what should be Bitcoin and crypto's most bullish year, where we see most of the parabolic explosive gains. It's just very difficult to get overly bearish until we actually see this breakdown. There's not too much value in really expecting it to happen. Of course, you want to prepare for it to happen. I think it's important just to be prepared for 85,000. Like I said yesterday, I think I measured this out, but let's just do it again. That would be near enough a 21% drop. I think that's definitely possible if this market wants to take a bit of a breather, really shake out any weak hands here. People start to say this is a cycle high, it's all over, Bitcoin's topped, it can't get any better than this. You know, if it can't maintain 100,000 with Trump coming in, it's never going to do it, etc., etc. And then probably we start to see more bullish catalysts. We start to see more nations talking about Bitcoin, more big corporations buying Bitcoin, the ETFs. We start to hear people then talking about sort of much higher targets when Bitcoin clears this level, super cycle, all of this stuff. We see Ethereum start to run, altcoins get the altcoin season, and it all completely sort of ticks into life next year. So look, I think there's still reasons to be optimistic, and I really do think we are just going through a sort of temporary pause in this uptrend. Bit of time for things to cool off, bit of time for some of the longer term moving averages to catch up. Obviously, we looked at these yesterday, but we can see just how extended Bitcoin is from its sort of longer term moving averages on the weekly, potentially over the next sort of few weeks. Well, even into January time, it might have caught up. The 20 week might be up at price in January time, but it also might not be. So yeah, we are extended. This is what I'm trying to say. And look, let's just take this market as it comes, as we're doing right now. Obviously, looking at the liquidation heat map, then so I've looked at the weekly this morning, and you can see most of the liquidity is actually above price. The vast majority of it over the last week, we've got liquidations all the way up to the all-time high around about 108,000 or just above there. So, I mean, obviously, this is really sticking out at around about sort of 99,500. I think Bitcoin probably does make a run on this bounce to $100,000 and potentially comes all the way up to around about 102, $103,000. Obviously, that would line up with some of the sort of levels we're looking at, some of the levels we're talking about, sort of these horizontals here. Obviously, you've got $102,000, you've got 99 and a half where price rejected from last time. So obviously, these horizontals are working fairly well. And above that, you've obviously got the bottom side of this ascending channel that we were in. So it could be that we come back up and we retest and we feel some of this sort of inefficiency in from this breakdown, sort of back to this lower high. And then it really depends whether we can, put in a higher low here and start to go bullish sooner, or whether we come all the way back down and retest the low. Obviously, at the moment, I'm favoring a little bit of the retest. I'm favoring a bit more of a cool off in this market for things to reset a little bit further. I think it'd be quite healthy, but let's see. I mean, like I say, these pullbacks, they can happen very quickly. I wouldn't expect this to go on really beyond the first week of January. So like I say, probably the first week of January, we see a low, and we well, if we haven't seen the low by say the second week of January, the end of the second week of January, I think the low is probably in. So I don't expect this correction to sort of drag on for too long. But let's see where we are. For now, like I say, I'm expecting a bounce first before any continued downside. Obviously, we can go back to our main chart that we've been looking at over the last few days, and I've been talking about the fact that, look, I'm expecting Bitcoin, if it does come down to this box here, this would be my value area. This would be where I'd be looking to establish sort of more sort of long-term buys. I think this would be really good value, anything along this trend line. So if we do get that double dip down, I'll start to dip my toes in the water all the way down to about 85,000. Like I say, I'm not expecting sort of a breakdown sort of from there, all things remaining equal and constant, obviously barring some sort of black swan or other catalyst to actually drive us lower. I don't think, one of those things might be a very, very hawkish, Jerome Powell, and inflation really starts to take off. That could be another catalyst that obviously sort of pulls us down further, but I'm not really expecting it. I do think this market is going through what is a much needed sort of healthy reset right now, which will be good for obviously prolonging this bull market beyond Q1 of next year. And like I say, we've found support again on this descending diagonal. So descending diagonal sometimes can be pretty interesting. We do, often cut through them, but occasionally we do actually sort of find them as support. Definitely coming in with this 786 as confluence. So it's good to see Bitcoin showing a little bit of sort of strength here on this trend line, like actually like getting a bounce here. And let's see if we can make our way up to some of these targets I've talked about. Like I say, around 102,000 up to about 103,500, I think will be the danger zone. That is the area that Bitcoin really needs to reclaim for me to go bullish again. I think anything above this $103,600, that would be the point. If we can establish ourselves back above this band here, I will start to get bullish and targeting all-time highs again. But whilst we are sort of in the discount zone, obviously we need to be mindful of prices coming a little bit lower. So I think bounces into 102,000 to 103,500 are probably ones to be wary of. If you're on leverage, you might want to de-risk a little bit there, and wait to see if we have the strength to actually push through those levels before looking to go a little bit more aggressive in your longs again. Just looking at Ethereum as well. So Ethereum sort of making a bit of a retest, filling some of this wick, obviously coming in to the area that I'm looking to add to Ethereum, just sort of stepping back onto the daily here on Ethereum. As you can see, I've got some targets here. I'm expecting worst case scenario, Ethereum comes down to really $2,800 to $2,900, I think will probably be an ultimate low for Ethereum. This would probably require Bitcoin to lose 90,000 and come down to 85,000. I think we could probably see that move down on Ethereum if that did happen on Bitcoin. Failing that, if Bitcoin was to make sort of a lower high and then make a retest, I think Ethereum could come down to this ascending trend line here. I'm just going to sort of drag this on a little bit further. This is basically the lows of the summer and the highs of the summer, this sort of accumulation sort of channel here, which we then broke out from. I think it's reasonable to suggest that Ethereum could come down and retest that. It's got its 200-day moving average as well, around a similar kind of area. So potentially we could come down, and obviously that is still within the area that I'd be looking to accumulate. So yeah, I think that's probably the worst case scenario. What I'd probably like to see would be more of a retest of the 3,100 level if Bitcoin was to come down towards 90,000, just to show that actually Ethereum has the strength to hold this low. Buyers are starting to step in, and then I think that will make for probably a quicker recovery as well. So yes, I don't really want to see the current lows taken out if we're going to be as bullish as I hope we're going to be in Q1 of next year. Obviously, if we do, it can mean for a slower recovery. Solana as well, like I say, coming close to its 200-day moving average and its 618 Fibonacci retracement. I think this will be very, very strong support for Solana. I expect buyers to step in. We've got two ascending trend lines as well as confluence in that area. So that's really my target on Solana around about this 167 to 168 area. I'm not expecting too much more downside from that. Wicks below, fine, but I would be expecting this area to hold up, and I hope it would do. Like I say, if Bitcoin loses the 90,000 zone, then potentially this could open up to Solana coming down as low as sort of 135 to 140. I think as an absolute worst case scenario, that would probably line up with Ethereum coming down to 2,800. So yeah, it's obviously, it's the moment of opportunity. Obviously the stakes are high right here. There's obviously sort of high risk with us potentially coming lower, but there's also a very high reward. Obviously, if you catch a good entry here off this 169 or even lower, but I mean, even off this 169 level, if you think about where Solana potentially could go, if you're still bullish for the bull run and you're looking at price targets of, 400, 600, I've even heard of $1,000 being predicted by some people for Solana this cycle, then you're looking at this and you're saying to yourself, well, that is a absolutely huge return if obviously you get these entries right. Obviously, the key is just not to be shaken out from this market if things do roll down a bit lower. So that's it for the majors. Just looking at Pepe as well. So Pepe currently holding its previous all-time high, holding its mid-range, its 50% level. So this is a really key area for Pepe. Like I say, if the other markets roll over, Pepe likely takes a bit of a tumble as well, maybe as low as its 200-day moving average. But obviously, the 618 has also been support, so potentially retest this support too. But yeah, I'd like to see Pepe dig in here and start to put in a bit of a rally. And like I say, we've got this descending trend line on the 4 hour on Pepe that we really want to get above to flip this more bullish. And that probably will coincide with Ethereum breaking out from its trend line. Obviously, we've got this 4 hour trend line connecting these highs. We've got another sort of trend line that has been worked fairly well as support and resistance over the last few days too. So potentially we could get some breakouts over this, over the next day or two on Pepe and also on Ethereum. And then we could see these markets put in a proper bounce. That's what I'm really looking for in the short term to make me a little bit more optimistic that we have a bounce incoming. And of course, traditional markets are back open today. So if we look at the dollar sort of pushing up a little bit. Like I said, I'm a trend trader. There's nothing really here to stop me from being bullish on the dollar up to around about 109, and from there potentially a bit higher into this order block around about 110, the highest probably around about this 111. Obviously, any rejections at any of these levels would be a lower high for the dollar. So potentially that could lead to some more downside over the course of the next year. But obviously, with Jerome Powell being pretty hawkish last month, that has really been the catalyst for the dollar to tick up a bit. So obviously, we'll be paying close attention to what happens with the dollar over the next few days. If we look at the stock market as well, so we can see stocks obviously under some pressure last week, but they are looking to put in a bounce here so far, up on the day ever so slightly. Really, I think Bitcoin will be largely led by what the stock market does here. If the stocks do break last week's low, then obviously expect a move down to lower prices. In this scenario, expect Bitcoin probably to lose 90,000 and come down into the 80s. So yes, we definitely have to have an eye on the stock markets this week. The Nasdaq as well, it's got its support. Obviously, a little bit more in terms of annotations on this graph. We can see that it's currently held support at the summer high, July high on the Nasdaq. It's also holding its 50-day moving average as support right now. So the Nasdaq, let's see where it goes from here. Obviously, we want to see a bounce and recovery in stocks to obviously sort of witness more strength coming into crypto. But obviously, with what I've talked about on Bitcoin, it's likely we could make a lower high initially and go for some sort of retest. So obviously, the danger remains whilst we are below all-time highs on stocks, and we just have to, like I say, play these markets day by day. But I am expecting probably a bit of a rally now into the end of the month. Whether that can retest the all-time high, if it can, that would be fairly strong. I'm more of a believer that usually when we retest levels, that they become more likely to break as opposed to things like double tops occurring. Certainly macro uptrends. I think the best thing we could probably see would be a retest here, coming down a higher low, and then that kind of gives us a level that we can look to break out from. So that's what I'll be watching on the Nasdaq. Hopefully, it gets back up to its all-time high, it starts to consolidate before breakout, and then crypto will obviously, in that scenario, be unlikely to go much lower than the lows made last week. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you very much for watching. Obviously, it's holiday season, so please do enjoy your holidays with friends, family, whoever you're with. Have a great time. I'm committed to doing streams throughout the festive season, so I'll be back again tomorrow. Obviously, Wednesday, Christmas Eve, Thursday, Christmas Day. I want to be here with you pretty much every single day this week. So, it might be that one or two of the updates are a little bit sort of briefer and a bit more concise and compact. Some of you might like that. I'm not too sure. Give me some feedback maybe on what you think about me doing sort of longer videos or more compact ones. But obviously these are meant to be, short, fast, sort of morning updates. In terms of doing second and third videos, probably won't have too much time to do much of that unless things start to get really, really volatile in the markets. And then, of course, I'll jump on and do an emergency stream as and when that seems to be appropriate. But for now, like I say, just going back to Bitcoin, I'm expecting things probably to bounce here and follow the path that I've obviously drawn out this morning. So likely up to around 102,000, maybe a little bit higher. And then I'd be thinking we might come down and make a retest of these lows. But like I say, a lot of this will depend on what the stock market does. So really, I think the Nasdaq and the S&P will take the lead for the next few days and potentially the next couple of weeks. And once we see stocks really establish a solid low and a firm footing and start to push back on to new all-time highs, which I truly believe they will do over the next month, then I expect Bitcoin and crypto to follow fairly closely behind. So that's the update. Again, thank you for watching, and I will catch you all on the next one. GM, GM, GM.